And welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burrows. That is Zach Reagan, wherever you listen throughout the world. We thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple, Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe, because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. Speaking of Mondays, it is 1 right now, and it is 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That means we are live on YouTube on the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. And you can watch the show there, but not just watch. You can comment and quite literally be a part of the show. We love responding to the comments, interacting with everybody that watches. So drop into the comments. Tell us your thoughts about what we're talking about. And hit the notification bell, the subscribe button, the everything else. You know, it's YouTube. You know what to do. At Charlie_Burrows, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports on the social medias. A to Z Sports.com is where you'll find everything that Zach writes on the internet. All right, let's get down to business. Tennessee walked into Neyland Stadium, dark mode, and laid the wood to South Carolina. Outside of just that opening where Tennessee got down, was it 10-7 at one point? Game was never really in doubt. They just, I wouldn't say they ran it up. I don't know that I would call it a beat down or a blowout necessarily, because it was kind of a slow building kind of thing. But 21-point win. You won by 3 scores. It was pretty nice. You watched the game, Zach, just like I did. What's up, man?
Man, anytime you lose the turnover battle and still win by 21 points, that's especially a conference game, that's a pretty big win. So it was not a total beatdown, but Tennessee definitely took care of business. And for me, and I think most Tennessee fans, I bet it just felt like a relief. It wasn't like celebrating, not even like beating LSU last season, not even, Clemson or Florida, certainly not Alabama. It wasn't a game where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe we won. This was a huge win. It was just like, oh, thank God, that's out of the way. Took care of business there. If it did what we thought Tennessee would do, winning by 3 scores, what they should do against South Carolina, what they did in 2021. So that was kind of my feeling on Saturday night. It was just relief and glad it was out of the way.
Yeah, it was good to just get that done. Everybody was talking, oh, it's a must-win for Josh Heupel if you lose this. I would almost say it wasn't a must-win as much as it was a must-not-lose.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Like, you win, you don't get a ton out of it. You beat South Carolina. I don't think South Carolina is a great football team. But if you lost, that's very bad. I mean, two years in a row to a coach that I think is ultimately going to end up getting fired at South Carolina. I don't think he's very good. I think they're kind of coming to that realization. I actually sent you earlier today, Zach. I sent you a podcast of a South Carolina show, and I told you I had listened to it to goof on it. Like, I was like, let's see what these guys had to say, and then it was just kind of sad. Like, the guy was just sort of like, yeah, we're pretty bad. We just got rocked in both trenches, and Shane Beamer's not doing much out there. So yeah, tough times for South Carolina may be coming right up. But regardless, we're going to talk about Tennessee in all of this. Going to run down the game and everything that happened, and then we're going to talk about resetting our expectations. So you're 5 games in, you're 4-1. You beat South Carolina by 3 touchdowns. You lost to a Florida team who we just saw over the weekend is maybe not so good. But you lost to them in the swamp. If that's any excuse at all, it's not really, but regardless. And so we're going to reset our predictions and kind of say where we think Tennessee is headed for the rest of the season before this bye week and before the rest of the season commences. We'll do that. Then it was a big recruiting weekend for Tennessee here. I mean, some pretty serious heavy hitters were in town, and we're going to talk about that and then finish off the show. Producer Matt going to be back with us. Just, bye week coming up. We're going to do some bye week score predictions. And also, he was at the game. We're going to get a live report from somebody that was at the game. That's going to be the show today. But let's just get to breaking down what we watched on Saturday, what it means, Brew McCoy's injury, and what all of our thoughts were. And we'll do that right after I tell you about our first amazing sponsor, Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans, serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state of Tennessee. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Go get yourself a health plan. Support them because they support us. Now to the game. 41-20. I was feeling pretty good in that second half. I had predicted 38-24, and I was a couple of field goals away from absolutely nailing it. A couple of field goals. A couple of field goals. South Carolina would have scored an additional touchdown. But regardless, Tennessee won by about what I thought they would. I said 14. Tennessee added on a touchdown to that. They covered. They even covered the halftime spread that me and Crompton talked about. But it wasn't necessarily that easy. You look at that score and you go, okay, three score win. Tennessee just disposed of these boys. Yes and no. It came at the cost of, first things first, Brew McCoy, who just, at first glance, I thought it might have been a compound fracture. I said it on the halftime show.
First glance? Because SEC Network showed it for a lot of glances, by the way.
Yeah.
Just want to throw that in there.
They really dwelled on it there. They didn't show the actual injury. They didn't show a replay. But yeah, they definitely did just show his leg. I thought it might have been compound, poking out of the skin. Not fun to think about, but ultimately I don't think that ended up being the case. It was a dislocation and a break. And yeah, I mean, he's done for the season, you got to think. Had surgery that night. And that is a big loss of a playmaker. But it really leads to the discussion of what we saw after that. Prayers for him, and hopefully he makes full recovery and either goes to the NFL. He also, we've come to find out through a little bit of research, could actually come back this coming year. I believe he has a COVID year. That's a different discussion all in itself. But where does Tennessee go now? Because in that game, even with Brew McCoy, let's be totally honest, Tennessee doesn't have like flashy playmakers. You don't have a Jalen Hyatt this year. You just don't. At least if you do, you don't know it yet. That person has not emerged. Squirrel White made an absolutely spectacular play in that game, but is he that same caliber of athlete that's going to lay down 5 touchdowns against Alabama? I don't know. Where does Tennessee turn at that wide receiver position? I think that's a huge question going forward. I don't know what you saw in that game from the wideouts there outside of Brew, but what were your thoughts after seeing that injury?
I mean, from the top, I feel like this is a game where you saw how important depth is for Tennessee at wide receiver. I mean, coming into this season, we talked all about those top 4 wide receivers: McCoy, Dante Thornton, the transfer from Oregon, Ramel Keaton, and Squirrel White. And where does the playing time come in? Do you play 4 wide receivers? Do they rotate more? And suddenly, okay, well, McCoy's out for the rest of the season. Keaton's, a little banged up, even though he played almost every snap. Saturday night, it seemed like Tennessee still didn't go his way a ton. I don't know if that was by design, if he was a decoy some of the time. He did make some big catches, but he wasn't as involved as maybe we expected. Maybe that was just the way defense was playing things. And then Dante Thornton, of course, was out with kind of a surprise inactive on Saturday with an injury he sustained in practice the previous week. So you hope you get Thornton back through the bye. You hope you get Keaton healthy through the bye. That kind of gives you those two along with Squirrel. And then Caleb Webb, stepped up in that UTSA game, is getting more playing time. Chaz Nimrod had a bad drop on a 3rd down against South Carolina that Tennessee really needed that play. But, it's youth. It's going to happen. We've seen it happen with almost every receiver at Tennessee this season so far. It's just a thing that receivers have to go through sometimes. There's always going to be drops. We saw it Jerry Rice had drops, Terrell Owens, Randy Moss. Every receiver that's played had some tough drops in tough situations. It's just part of playing sports. But luckily, you do have the depth there, I think, to weather this. maybe Caleb Webb steps up and he's like Ramel Keaton last year whenever Tillman went down, or Chaz Nimrod. I mean, you never know. Maybe Thornton, the light switch kind of comes on and he really grasps this offense that takes a little bit of time to kind of figure out. Maybe it clicks for him after the bye week against Texas A&M, and he steps up and he's Jalen Hyatt 2.0. Like, who knows? I mean, there's going to be opportunities there, no doubt. But losing McCoy because his blocking on the perimeter is so important, and you can't say enough about that. Speaking of the perimeter, those little screens that they throw out there, if it does go to McCoy, he has the body type and the strength to be able to knock these defensive backs and some of these linebackers over and get those extra 3 or 4 yards to extend the drive and to let your tempo go to work and get into the offense that Tennessee wants to get in. So not having McCoy is certainly going to hurt the offense. I mean, it's a huge loss, just the tone that he sets, but I think they have the talent there to overcome it and to still have some of those splash plays happen. Assuming that you're able to kind of connect with those down the field. I think you have the receivers that can execute as long as the play calling, Joe Milton, getting the ball down the field to those guys and seeing it. If all that lines up, I think they'll be okay.
Elias says, looking to see Nathan Leacock get some reps. And actually, Heupel in the postgame presser actually brought up Nathan Leacock's name. You have these young guys. They're just completely unproven. You got to see. Don asks, can we go deep with the receivers that we have left? Squirrel, for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody else.
Keaton's, we've seen it from Keaton.
Keaton, you can. Yeah. He just is not. They're outside of Squirrel. There is nobody that can do that Jalen Hyatt, just like burn past somebody with pure speed.
Thornton,
like
that. Maybe.
We
haven't seen
it. Yeah, we got to see it. Supposedly, that was kind of in his skill set, but he's got to be 100% healthy. He's got to actually show it when he's out there. When the ball comes to him, he's got to catch it. That's really the key for him. But it's no matter how you slice, it's going to be tough. Outside of that, there's a lot to this game. And maybe you could combine two elements here that we need to talk about. Cooper Mays came back. And the offensive line looked significantly better. And I was almost surprised by how much better it looked. Like, I thought it was going to look better. But it was like night and day. And maybe that's a function of South Carolina's defensive line not being world beaters or something. But I think the offense just runs smoother. He's a nice veteran presence out there. He just brings an experienced, level head and a better, he's just better at playing center, period, than you had with Ollie Lane. Combine that with, is Tennessee a run-heavy offense now? I mean, you have Joe Milton right now with kind of tweaked knee. You're not sure exactly where he's at. He's already not amazing at throwing the ball. He's not necessarily terrible, but he's not consistent. And they just ran it all over South Carolina. And it's with all three dudes. Dylan Sampson, monster. Jalen Wright, monster. Jabari Small, monster. I mean, it's just a great backfield. Every single one of them made plays in that game. And I mean, I think you're talking probably the best running back room in the SEC. And I think those two things go together. The offensive line has to be better for Tennessee to be a run-heavy team. I think Tennessee, looking at the way things are, Tennessee almost has to be a run-heavy team this season. And that's really interesting because I did not anticipate that coming into this season. They really like to be pretty much balanced last year, and I think Tennessee might be run heavy because that's where your skill is. It just is what it is.
And I think, well, real quick on Cooper Mays, I think you have to point out the fact that he came back after not playing pretty much the whole month of September, the first 4 games of the season, not really practicing much, and played 70 snaps out of 74, pretty much the whole game. I think he was out there all but the last series. To do that with the conditioning that it requires to be in, the condition it requires you to be in to play in this offense, the tempo and to operate that was pretty impressive. I know there's a lot of controversy, or maybe not controversy, just discussion about the injury and the surgeries that he had and staying out when he was going to be back. I thought it was impressive that he came back and played to that level, and they didn't have to rotate him in and out with Ollie Lane. They didn't have a mix and matched offensive line because of that. I mean, he gutted it out, and he said on Dave Hooker's Off the Hook Sports on his appearance on Sunday that he was kind of hurting. He was glad the bye week was coming up so he could get a couple of weeks to get healthy before Texas A&M. So credit to him for coming back and playing the way he did. But as far as the run game, I think it should be encouraging if you're a Tennessee fan to see this. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating, I guess, to not see some of those deep passes because that's the highlight plays. That's what changes the momentum of a game in a split second. And we have seen some of those, just not as many. But the fact that, hey, Tennessee can go run the ball and pick up 6-7 yards a carry if they need to, that's impressive. I mean, they have 3 running backs that are playing at a really high level right now. Josh Heupel showing that this offense is not one-dimensional. They can do a lot of different things. If that's the style that they need to play and if that's what the defense is going to give them, they're going to take it. And I saw a stat on Twitter. I don't know if it's totally accurate, so don't go out there sharing this with your friends and saying that it's for a for sure stat, but it does seem like it might be legit. They said that Alvin Kamara was the only running back since Philip Fulmer that's averaged over, I think, 6 yards a carry until this season. I think Tennessee's got all 3 that are right there at that number. And if that's the case, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's over the last 15 years. And playing against a couple of SEC teams and to still have that average pretty much halfway through the season, that says a lot about the offensive scheme and what Heupel can do, and that he's not just limited to this one read gimmicky offense, if that's what people want to call it. It's definitely not that. They'll go run the ball down your throat. And look, we were texting about it. People on Twitter were tweeting about it. Why aren't they running the ball at the end of the second half? And it seemed like they started getting some 3-and-outs before Kamal Hadden's interception, that pitch 6 that changed the momentum. They came out in the second half. They ran the ball again, and in the first half, it may not have been play calling. Maybe Joe Milton was seeing something at the line of scrimmage that said, hey, we need to throw here. They're trying to stop the run. They did that a lot against Mississippi State the previous week, so it wouldn't be a surprise. But when they gave it back to them, they took it, and that's pretty much what put the game away. And I think it's encouraging to see that Tennessee can do that.
Absolutely. And it kind of leads to a lot of questions tying in Brew McCoy's injury here, and a lot of folks, we got some good comments building up here that are kind of going in the direction I wanted to go in. Billy Bob says, I would like to see Sampson as a wideout. Absolutely. Maybe that slot position. He's obviously very short. And that's
Alabama kind of did that with Jahmyr Gibbs last year at times.
Yeah. Yes.
He was probably their best receiver, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, look there. Get creative, because you have Cam Seldon, who still you have even more depth there. D. Williams. I think a lot of people have kind of been looking around going like, can he play on
Somebody
offense?
asked Josh Heupel about that specifically at the Knoxville Quarterback Club today. And he kind of like danced around it a little bit, suggested that there's a lot that goes into learning this offense, which we know that. So I don't know if that was his way of saying, hey, it's just not going to work out there or what, or maybe just typical Heupel coach speak. He's not going to give anything away. But that's something that people are definitely asking about, and Heupel's hearing it from fans.
He definitely is, because D's electric, and I don't think there's any way to deny it. It's kind of like Dylan Sampson, where you look and you go like, man, this dude's killer. Like, why are we not getting the ball in his hands more? It feels kind of similar to D. Williams. Maybe there's something there that we just don't know about.
The thing with Dylan Sampson, real quick though, is that Jalen Wright, I think, averaged more yards per carry than him. Like, Sampson's electric, and the ball needs to be in his hands often, but Jalen Wright is right there with him. I mean, he's doing a lot of incredible things this season. You can tell his patience, all that stuff has improved tremendously, and he was good last year. I mean, he would have been 1,000-yard rusher last year if it was just him in that backfield. So it's almost like a Kamara, Jalen Hurd situation, I feel like, with Wright and Sampson right now.
Yeah, that's a big comparison, as you already kind of said there. But I mean, it's definitely the best set of running backs we've had since then. I don't think that's even in doubt at all. Obviously, we'll have to keep everybody healthy, and we'll see exactly how Josh Heupel uses everyone. But I think you have to be looking at using those dudes in creative ways now. that you have Brew McCoy out, and I like Green Wave. He said maybe with the best edge blocker out, maybe we'll throw more downfield. Maybe I get the feeling they'll probably lean into the run game even more. But I would like to see that. Joe can, when he's on, he can throw downfield for sure. This is interesting, and we haven't even talked about the defense yet. But Jason Dyer said, I heard on Sports Talk today that we may be getting Keenan Peely back for Texas A&M. I don't know about that. I mean, that's Sports Talk's pretty 99-1. I didn't hear it. Jason heard it. So I don't know exactly what was said, but wasn't it? It's a torn muscle, I think, that he had. That takes a while to come back from.
Well, I mean, my stance on Josh Heupel and Tennessee injuries is the same as your stance on beating Florida and Kentucky beating Tennessee. I'll believe it when I see it. So I'm not really going to take anything that's said to heart until October 14th at 3:30 Eastern time, whenever CBS airs that game, and as far as who's playing that day, because I don't think Heupel's going to let us know if Keenan Peely's playing in that game. I don't think he wants anyone to know. And in fact, he might even just float it out there so Texas A&M will think he's playing. Who knows? At this point, nothing would surprise me, and that's not throwing shade at Josh Heupel by any means. Jimbo Fisher, the coach that he will face next, is notorious for doing the exact same thing. So we'll just have to see how it goes over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Trey says, don't you think Thornton has to be the answer? We already kind of said that. Basically, yes. But what have we seen that he's definitely going to be the answer? Of course, before Jalen Hyatt emerged last year, you hadn't seen that he was going to be the answer. And ultimately he ended up becoming the dude, the Biletnikoff winner. So, yeah, I would love, for everything that we heard in the offseason about Dante Thornton, please be that guy, because supposedly the physicality is all there. But let's talk about, obviously we're kind of doting on the offense just because it was fun to see that switch up where you were just winning in the trenches and just running all over South Carolina. That was great. And I think it gives you a good identity in light of Brew McCoy going out. If you're going to lose power on the outside, at least your running game is working really, really well. But with the defense, you also wanted defensive trenches. That defensive line looked powerful. It ate South Carolina alive. Spencer Rattler was running for his life the entire game. And it wasn't just stalwart older guys. It wasn't just Tyler Barron getting into the backfield. James Pierce, man. Here, I told you I was going to do this, Zach. This is my... If you don't know that sound, that's a blue tick coonhound. Because James Pierce is a dog, a certified dog. I'm gonna make that a new thing on the show. It's a dog alert. Dog alert. James Pierce is dog. He was a monster, man. He was the catalyst of the pick six. That Kamal hadn't. Even Crumpton kind of said this in our post game, that Kamal Haddon wasn't necessarily playing amazing defense when he got that pick six. He was in the right place at the right time, and he took advantage of that play, regardless of what he was doing outside of that. And James Pierce had the pressure that caused that pick six. And outside of that, he just was everywhere. The team finished with 6 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss, I think. It was just brutal. But they brutalized South Carolina's offense. And then the defensive backs, probably the best game defensive backs have played definitely since Kentucky last year, maybe, of Josh Heupel's entire time at Tennessee.
They were good against Clemson.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They held it down against Klubnik there. But yeah, man, it was impressive. An impressive showing from the defense.
I thought Tim Banks in general, it might have been one of his best games. I know South Carolina scored 20 points, but you're going to have some games like that just because of Tennessee's offense where there's a few extra possessions for the other team. And that one, was it the 75 or whatever, 75-yard touchdown run from South Carolina on the first play after Tennessee had scored? I think that one you just got to chalk up to South Carolina called the perfect play and Tennessee called the absolutely wrong defense. Like, it was just happenstance on first down. You don't really expect that to happen. it was just kind of fortunate. It was a good play call by South Carolina, just an unlucky play call by Tennessee's defensive coordinator Tim Banks. But otherwise, I thought he called a great game. And one example, there was a third or a fourth down in the first half where Shane Beamer said that Spencer Rattler checked out of the play that South Carolina had called, which ended up, it would have been a perfect play call for the situation. They probably got the first down. But he thought he saw pressure coming from a certain area, and Tim Banks disguised it so well that he checked out of the play and checked into a play that was not, it just did not work with what Tim Banks had called defensively. So the way that he disguised that tripped up Spencer Rattler, a guy that, ate Tim Banks' lunch last season, if we're being honest, in Columbia. So I thought it was a really good bounce back performance. I wrote that it needed to be like a prove it game for Tennessee's defense Saturday night, not necessarily like we're making coaching changes if this goes south, because I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. I don't know what issues cause what and who's involved in different processes. Like I just don't have that insight. None of us really do. But they needed to show up. It's year 3. It's a big home game. You needed to have a performance where the defense holds its own and really makes a difference. And the defensive line is what kept that game from being a shootout. Otherwise, if Rattler gets time to throw, no matter how good the defensive backs are, if he's getting 5-6 seconds to throw the ball, he's going to find somebody. Somebody's going to find, get open, make some plays. Tennessee totally took Leggett out of the game, though, and because of the pressure, he wasn't able to have enough time to ever finally get into a situation where they can just kind of like make a Chiefs-type play that you see Mahomes and Kelsey make. They weren't able to do that because of the game that Tim Banks called and the pressure the defensive line put on. So I thought it was a really encouraging performance, definitely for Tennessee's defense and Tim Banks.
Absolutely. Agree 100% with all of that. I mean, the sad truth for South Carolina is that if they had a half-decent offensive line and one more solid wide receiver.
Like Juice Wells, who didn't play.
Like Juice Wells. He's probably best quarterback in the SEC. Not that there's just killer competition this year, but it's a sad state of affairs for them. That offensive line is absolutely horrendous. They got completely eaten alive. This is the second time this season that they've gotten completely eaten alive. Surprisingly, didn't get completely eaten alive against Georgia. At Georgia. I mean, they got worn down late and eventually, just couldn't handle it. But it's ugly for them. I already said my piece. Beamer's a clown. I think they're starting to really get a distaste for him. If he didn't pull a couple of miracles out of the hat at the end of last year, I think there would be real discontent for him at the moment. But he did. It's kind of a Butch Jones thing. So that's what Butch did, is like you won just enough not to have people completely, turn on you. But regardless, I loved how Tennessee looked in that game all the way around. I did see a comment. Where was it? Yeah, Will Vincent says, seriously, why were South Carolina fans taking their pants off in the crowd? Did you see this, Zach?
I saw I'm pretty sure I know what photo you're talking about in that situation. And I mean, I would love to know some of the context behind that.
I should have had it prepared. Well, I don't know. We probably can't show it on YouTube, to be totally honest. It was a rather large South Carolina fan who was getting arrested, and for some reason his pants were down. And people, obviously, all the Tennessee fans around that guy took pictures of him getting arrested with his pants down, and including one of the funny. There were multiple angles of it that I saw, but one of the funniest was pretty close, maybe same row that the guy was sitting on, and right behind the guy there was like a 12-year-old kid right behind him with his phone up, going. Just taking a picture of the guy getting arrested. I don't know what was going on there. South Carolina, their fans were absolutely on one after this. And talking about Spencer Rattler, let's wrap up the South Carolina game talk with this. After the game, Spencer Rattler goes in there and he got crushed. Just got crushed in that game. Played terribly. 169 yards passing total, I think, just did next to nothing. And he goes in and he says, well, this was Tennessee's Super Bowl, so congrats to them, I guess. It was something right along those lines. And then every South Carolina fan was like, yeah, that was Tennessee's Super Bowl. We were Tennessee's Super Bowl. Don't flatter yourself, South Carolina. Just stop. Everybody who says this is simply coping, is just being a sore loser. It's the ultimate sore loser thing to say. And the real deal here is that we all know, everybody who's not a South Carolina or Tennessee fan knows. If you're a third party to this, you know exactly what's going on. South Carolina largely is a completely irrelevant program. They always have been. The closest they've ever gotten to relevancy was playing in an SEC championship game in 2008? No, 10? 10? Whatever it was with Spurrier. That's about as close as they've ever gotten.
Butch Jones beat one of their best teams ever.
Oh, but he beat, and I believe that team with Spurrier went 11-2. And Butch Jones beat that team in his very first year, if I'm remembering correctly. That was 2013, I think. An irrelevant program that simply does not have the resources to be a powerhouse like your Georgias, your Alabamas, in the past, Tennessee. It's just not there. Tennessee doesn't think about South Carolina in that way. You're number, I don't know what, 6 in terms of importance on Tennessee's schedule in any given year. It was important last year because if Tennessee would have won, they would have made it to the college football playoff. So it was super important last year, sure. But in all of these other years where Tennessee isn't playing for a spot in the playoff, it's South Carolina. Like, we're relieved when you win, but we're not rushing the field. We're not getting too excited. We're not smoking cigars. We're not doing. Shut up. Don't flatter yourself. This is dumb. It's all cope because you're sad and you're mad that you lost. This was so silly. It didn't make me mad. You just kind of had to laugh at it, right?
No, I mean, I've probably said something similar after Tennessee lost to maybe even South Carolina last year. I don't know. I mean, it is in the moment, it is kind of that emotional reaction where you try to downplay, like, oh yeah, like we don't even care about this game as much as they do, which obviously is not true when it comes to South Carolina and Tennessee. I mean, both teams care a lot about that game, but I think South probably means a little more to South Carolina as Tennessee's main rivals are more Alabama, Florida, Georgia in that vein. But I mean, I didn't really, he was talking about the fans anyway. The question was about the fans and them chirping at him all night. And he said it was like their Super Bowl. So it wasn't really even talking about Tennessee's team. But after everything last year and then to lose that way, especially with him throwing the pick six that really gave Tennessee some momentum. And actually, I saw Elias mention, I think it was Elias up in the comments a little while ago about the 3rd and 20, whatever call it was, where Rattler threw the interception. Beamer explained after the game that the reason he did that, one was because of Tennessee's offense. He felt like if they ran the ball there, Tennessee had one timeout left. They'd call timeout, get the ball back with, 40 seconds to go. They'd probably have decent field position. But mostly he was worried about kicking to D. Williams. We were talking about him earlier, and the fact that he's averaging 21 yards of punt return. Even if he doesn't get to the end zone, there's a decent chance he gets across midfield. At the worst, maybe you get a field goal out of it. I mean, there's no guarantee Tennessee gets any points at all, but it was really the fear of D. Williams that led to that play call where they were just trying to hope to pick up maybe 10, 12 yards, give them a little better situation to punt, maybe run a little more time off the clock, force Tennessee to use that timeout. Clearly, it did not work out. They should have just ran the ball and took their chances, but that was Beamer's thought process on that, and that's why Rattler threw that ball when his feet weren't set and right to Kamal Hadden's hands.
Interesting call. The incorrect call for sure. Well, we're going along on this first segment, and we got 3 more to do. But yeah, all the way around, satisfying game outside of the horrific Brew injury. I mean, it's going to make this game bittersweet no matter how you slice it. But all things considered, great win, great momentum builder going into a very tough stretch of your schedule, the toughest stretch of your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get now to five games in. Let's re-predict Tennessee's season. And I believe I predicted 11-1. Zach, I think you did 10-2 before the season started. And let's see where we land now after 5 games. Right after I tell you about our next great sponsor, Zen Sports. If I can get the read, very professional live show here. It's football season. And it's time to switch to Zen Sports, the fastest growing sports book in Tennessee, changing the bonus game with their cash rewards program. We sign up for Zen Sports with code A2ZTN. Earn a welcome bonus that gives you 5% cash back on your total betting volume for your first 15 days of betting. Yeah, a insane offer. If you have friends who bet on sports, share your Zen Sports referral code with them, and then you'll earn 3% of their betting volume for their first 6 months of betting on Zen Sports with no cap on how much you can earn. So what are you waiting for? Stop wasting time and money on other sports books when you could be earning real cash rewards with Zen Sports. Download today on the App Store or at zensports.com, and your wallet will thank you later. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Zen Sports. Go download it. Fun app. So as I mentioned, I said 11-1. I think you said 10-2, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
The season started. Now you're 5 games in. Looking as far as the record goes, the only thing that really stands out is that horrific loss at Florida. And then you look at that one and you really say, that is truly the classic, what the hell happened Florida game. Florida clearly stinks. They got their butt kicked all the way up and down the field against Kentucky over the weekend. I mean, it was completely embarrassing. Kentucky ran for 300 yards against them. It just is ridiculous. And Tennessee, at least in that first half, total meltdown, never did recover against Florida. And so here we are, 4-1, Texas A&M, Alabama, Missouri, Kentucky, Vandy, UConn, still in Georgia, remaining. Where do you land, Zach? What do you think Tennessee's going to finish with record-wise?
Man, it's tough because I still feel pretty good about most of these games that I picked. Obviously, I had them beating Florida, going 10-2. I had them losing to Alabama on the road and losing to Georgia. The way the SEC's turned out this year, I feel like all those games are winnable. Like Georgia doesn't look nearly as good as they did last season. Maybe Stetson Bennett was a lot better than we realized. I don't know, but they had a tough time against South Carolina, which was in Athens. They had a tough time against Auburn on the road. You know, that I feel like that's a winnable game, but it's so far down the line. I mean, that's almost 2 months away. It's at the end, towards the end of November, that it's who knows what state both teams are going to be in. So, and with the Alabama game, it's almost the same way. Like I feel like if Texas A&M beats Alabama this weekend and then Tennessee beats Texas A&M, I don't feel like the vibe in Tuscaloosa is going to be the same as what we would normally see, because that is a crowd that is not used to having 2 losses by mid-October. They're starting to be on the downswing of Nick Saban's tenure. And that's not to say he won't win another national championship at Alabama. Maybe he does. Like, you get a transcendent quarterback, anything's possible, and he's still Nick Saban. But he doesn't have the grip on college football that he used to have. A lot of that's because of the portal and NIL, the rise of Georgia, a lot of different factors. Even the rise of Tennessee over the last 2 years has contributed to that. I mean, he lost Arian Carter to Tennessee and some other players. So that's a winnable game. The fact that it's on the road, though, concerns me, and I feel like the atmosphere there is going to swing that game one way or the other. If it's a raucous crowd, Tennessee has not proven yet that they can win in those environments. They just haven't. And until they do, it's hard to say that they will. It just is. So for now, I think I have to stick with the way I had it predicted, just because I just don't know what it's going to look like by that time of year. So, yeah, I think 9-3, and then hopefully you win the bowl game and you're 10-3. Coming off the season you had with the talent that you lost, I feel like that's reasonable. I don't think anybody should be upset if they go 10-3 with losses to Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. I mean, you're disappointed, obviously, because the Florida game's one that you should have won. All these games are winnable. But Tennessee is not the Tennessee from last year either. And that's okay. Like, you're not going to have that every single year. Now, maybe they turn into that moving forward. Maybe this defense continues to improve. Maybe the passing game picks up, and when you combine it with the running game, they hit their stretch. Down the stretch part of the season, they really find their rhythm. But for now, I have to stick with predicting the schedule to play out the way I thought it would, and 9-3 in the regular season.
9-3. The main difference from my prediction at the beginning of the year is how bad the offensive line has been. Now with Cooper Mays back, maybe that prediction improves, or my thought there improves with Cooper back. Andre Carrick, from what I've heard, he was definitely he is expected to come back and be the starter left guard. And so maybe you even improve further than how you played with South Carolina or against South Carolina. So there's that. But the offensive line to begin was worse than I thought it was going to be. And then Joe Milton, he hasn't been drastically worse than I thought he would be, but he hasn't been as good as I thought he would be. I thought he would run more. I really thought they would emphasize that with him. I thought it would be kind of the UTSA game. They open it up. They try to run him a good amount and try to make that a factor, and in that, make the passing game easier on him. That hasn't happened. Obviously, he's tweaked up right now with that knee, and so that throws an entire wrench in that. And, you take that into account also. Defense has been pretty much how I thought it would be. Improved for sure. Undoubtedly improved. Really powerful up front. Defensive backs, a couple of really solid games, and one at
the safeties
Florida
probably
that could have been better.
The safeties probably need to be better, I think.
Yeah. And Keenan Peely coming back. I mean, Lord, I pray that that prediction from Sports Talk, whoever said it, is true, and Keenan Peely will be back.
That would be huge.
But
huge.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Though the young guys have played well. T-Lander, looks like he's going to be a dude. Arian Carter is definitely a dude. Elijah Herring. I mean, they've got guys that are young, but Peely he's an NFL player. He's a guy you definitely want out there.
Yeah, you need that veteran presence and a guy who just in that opening game, it was just so clear that he's a really powerful piece for you. And take all of that into account. I will drop down to 9-3. I think it just seems the most likely thing. And I thought that before the season. I sort of was like, well, if Joe is not as good as I'm hoping he will be, it's a 9-3 team. He's not as good as I was hoping he would be. Again, not terrible. He's definitely not terrible, but he's not. I mean, he's just not confident with his legs. I was expecting him to have the inconsistency throwing the ball that he's had. I was 100% expecting that because it just is kind of who he is as a quarterback. But the legs and the physicality has been disappointing.
I almost want to tell him to go back to just throwing the ball like he wants to and not trying to take the air out of it, because I really feel, the one interception, South Carolina they beat him with their scheme. They beat everybody there with their scheme on Tennessee side of the ball. He never saw that other safety. They disguised their cover 2 look. The interception that was to Warren, that the pass was intended to Jacob Warren, I mean, that should be a touchdown. Jacob Warren had him beat. At worst, you throw that ball out there, and if it's an overthrow, it's an overthrow. It's a missed opportunity.
Exactly.
I think him trying to take the air out of the ball just a little bit there is what caused that interception. If he just throws that the way Joe Milton knows how to throw it, it's a touchdown, or it's an incompletion that sells past Jacob Warren.
Yeah, he's a bit of a head case. Nick says it well here. I think we can win with Joe 100%, but I don't think he's good enough to overcome mistakes and elevate us. Need everyone to execute, and that's the only path. I think that's well said. He is not the guy that's going to drag your team to a win. Let's say Alabama. You get there, you're down a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and you go, who is the guy that's going to get in here and take Tennessee to this win? Hendon Hooker was that guy. Is Joe Milton that guy? I don't know. If he is,
well, he hasn't went out and
I haven't seen it.
Kind of taken over a game yet to lead Tennessee to a win, and maybe that happens. I'm not saying that it can't. I just feel like, and this is no slight on Tennessee's coaches or Michigan's coaches or anywhere he's been, but I feel like he's probably taken in so much information at this point and so many people telling him what he should do, how he should do, that it's really hard for him to go out there and just play free the way we saw Hendon Hooker last year, the way you saw Spencer Rattler in Columbia last year, those last couple of games. And I think some of that was his issues too, coming from Oklahoma and going to South Carolina and hearing all these different things. I think there's something real about that. And, every situation's unique and everybody's journey's unique, but it's definitely something he has to prove he can do. And until he does it, I don't think teams are going to respect it. But if he does it one time, maybe it changes the way teams play defense against Tennessee. Maybe it
Yeah.
changes a lot of things, and everything just opens up more because it really just feels like they're giving Tennessee the run because they don't respect what Joe Milton can do in the passing game right now.
Yeah, I mean, Elias says if Joe does become that guy, then the ceiling goes way up. I mean, I go back to my 11-1 prediction. If Joe can be that guy, I think this is probably potentially the worst team Nick Saban is maybe ever going to have right now, and I mean, especially a quarterback, and even though I mean the dude they got, he can't throw a pass to save his life, but he can definitely run the ball well. But they're vulnerable. You have Georgia at home. Georgia's looking vulnerable. They had some weak games last year too, so you never know. But
Yeah,
I
I'm
like
not writing Georgia off just yet.
exactly. But the fact that you got him in Neyland Stadium, it changes that math a little bit. And
But
that
the bad thing about that game is it's late year.
yeah, I I just think 9-3 for me. It just makes the most sense. Probably Alabama and Georgia, those additional 2 losses. Maybe you squeak one out and get one of those, great statement signature wins for Heupel against Alabama or Georgia, and then drop a stupid one. Who knows? Like, I mean, that was last year. you got
You
your
win in
signature win, you dropped a stupid one.
you win in Tuscaloosa, but you drop a game to Texas A&M and still finish 9-3. I think everybody's just fine with that.
Yeah, all's forgiven. Texas A&M. Obviously, we're going to talk about Texas A&M. That's going to kind of be next week's show. Obviously, very good defensive line, offense with backup quarterback. They have a quarterback right now in Texas A&M who I would say is like the definition of like, yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. He's not excellent at anything, but he's like, he's all right. Yeah, he's like the exact definition of that. But that's next week's show. We'll save that. But I'll say 9-3. You say 9-3. It just feels most likely. Like you have a pretty favorable, tough schedule, but a favorable schedule as much as it can be, being an SEC East team, and so that I'll go there. Is 8-4 also very possible? For sure. Is 10-2 also very possible? For sure. So yeah, I'll land in the middle there.
Yeah, I think you got to win at least 9 games somehow this season. Like in some way, if that's 8-4 in a bowl game, whatever it is, I don't. You can't really go 8-5. Although, I mean, Philip Fulmer did it from time to time during some good Tennessee years. I mean, I think 2002 maybe was an 8-5 year, sandwiched in between 11 and 10 wins there. So it can happen, and sometimes those seasons do just happen. And I think as we see more parity coming into the sport again because of the transfer portal, because of NIL, you're going to see less just juggernauts that dominate for 5 years at a time, 10 years at a time in Alabama's case. But most of these programs, they go through like a 5-year stretch where they're just like the team, like USC at one point, Florida kind of had their moment, then Bama, Clemson a little bit, Georgia now. I think you're going to see fewer of those kind of dynasty type programs. It's going to be more like, oh, Alabama only won 9 games this year, and then the next year maybe they win 12, and it's just kind of back and forth like that. I think that's going to become a lot more common like it used to be.
Well, we'll see where it goes. Fingers crossed. I mean, hopefully 11-1. They proved me wrong. I thought Crompton was crazy at the beginning of last year. He was like, it's 11-1. I believe in Heupel. Hendon Hooker's that dude. He knew, and I think he literally predicted 11-1. Ultimately, it was 10-2. But yeah, I want that to happen, but I just got to go with what's probably the most likely outcome there. Now, let's finish with the fact that it was a huge recruiting weekend for Tennessee with South Carolina, the dark mode, such an insane environment. And you got specifically one massive recruit in town, but on the whole, it was just a big recruiting weekend in general. And we're going to talk about it right after I tell you about Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskey. Nothing goes better with a Tennessee sports victory than a great whiskey. And I'm talking specifically about Rattle and Snap Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey. Log Still Distillery has released a new Tennessee whiskey product line called Rattle and Snap, named after a long-forgotten game of chance. Rattle and Snap is a whiskey for those who make their own luck. There's a 4-year and an 8-year version. I've had both. They're both awesome, great in cocktails, great neat in a glass. Go get your hands on a bottle in stores across the state of Tennessee, but it's also available in Kentucky, Indiana, and Mississippi. If you are a non-Tennessee based Vol, run and don't walk to get yourself some Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskey for those Tennessee sports victories. Follow Rattle and Snap on Instagram at Rattle and Snap Whiskey. I saw earlier in the comments, I think it was like way back at the beginning. I think it was Billy Bob. He said that he had a tough Monday and he needed some Rattle and Snap. Go get some. Stores across the state of Tennessee. It is there for you, Billy Bob. All right. Recruiting. We haven't had a recruiting segment in quite some time, but I think you got to talk about this. Coming into the weekend, you saw from Jordan Seaton, who is a 5-star offensive lineman. He canceled a visit to Oklahoma and chose to come to Tennessee, and then was tweeting all of this stuff about Tennessee. This is the only color orange that I like. Go Vols. And he was doing all this stuff, gassing up Tennessee fans. You hear from the recruiting reporters that in a general sense, it went really well. It's hard for it to not go really well when you have the dark mode in that environment and the whole deal. And then Tennessee, of course, wins in that environment. It just builds on it even more exponentially there. Did you see any recruiting tidbits out there about this, Zach? Because this just seemed like a guy who, if Tennessee could get, it would be so huge. When you look at how important, like Darnell Wright, I was thinking Darnell Wright was for Tennessee. You just need another dog on that offensive line, and you got to think Seaton could be one. What'd you see about this, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're seeing that you load up on defensive linemen and you have really good offensive linemen. You're probably going to win a lot of games in the SEC. The rest of the stuff will kind of take care of itself, and that was certainly true on Saturday night, because that was really what won the game for Tennessee. So definitely a guy that Tennessee needs to get, wants to get, would be a huge addition. It seems like they're really on the right track here. I mean, he talked to, I think, VolQuest about how much time Josh Heupel spent with him. How real Heupel was, kind of a lot of the things we've heard about Heupel, that he's just a good dude that's just normal to talk to. It's not like getting a sales pitch from people all the time. It's Heupel just hanging out like dudes would hang out, like with a buddy. And I think that's what's so relatable about Heupel. He's close with Boo Carter as well, Tennessee commit that was also at the South Carolina game. Hopefully Boo Carter ends up in Tennessee. It seems like he's going to. I know some of those visits to Colorado have made people a little uneasy, but honestly, if I had a chance to go to Colorado right now, I'd probably want to go check out a game in that environment and see what it was all about as well, just to experience it, because it is pretty amazing what's been happening out there. So, otherwise, I think they're in a good spot for him. We'll see how it plays out. There's still a couple of months here left to go. I think he's still got to get an official visit in, which is when they can really roll the red carpet out for him, and maybe that takes it to another level. But it's kind of hard to think that another team could jump Tennessee at this point. They always could, but the things that he was saying, it feels like Tennessee's in the driver's seat, and they just got to kind of continue what they're doing here. He's a borderline 5-star guy too. I mean, he's right. He'll probably be a 5-star, like a full 5-star on all the services by the time the next, updates are done and before the final rankings come out for this recruiting class, which sometimes is after they sign.
Yeah, I think, let's see, on 3 has him as the number 1 offensive tackle in the class 2024. And then, 247, number 3 offensive tackle. He was a 4-star on 247. But of course, like you said, you got to think by the end of it, if on 3 is thinking that highly of him, there's a pretty good chance he's going to end as a 5-star on both services there. And actually, Ben, I did see this. I saw somebody tweet about this. Austin Price has said that, this is from Ben Hall in a comment. Austin Price has said Boo Carter had been recruiting Seaton really hard to Tennessee. Yeah, apparently they're boys. And that's amazing, and obviously makes you feel better about the Boo Carter recruitment too.
Hopefully Brian Niedermeyer doesn't get into his ear, since Seaton does go to IMG Academy, where the Moose Niedermeyer is on staff down there, and celebrated pretty openly when Carnell Tate committed to Ohio State over Tennessee last year, if you don't recall that. In fact, it resulted in me getting blocked on Twitter by Brian Niedermeyer. I think I just quote tweeted it with like, look at this guy or something. But either way, hopefully he's not in his ear trying to sway him somewhere else.
Yeah, you and most people. I was looking. Yeah, on LinkedIn, Niedermeyer is still at IMG. He's yeah. It just lists. It doesn't actually. Oh no, it says. Doesn't this mean you're unemployed? It says hashtag open to work on his LinkedIn.
Yeah, I don't know. No telling with him.
Regardless, I'm just looking at the public LinkedIn page.
Hey, look, I appreciate what he tried to do when he was at Tennessee. He pulled out all the stops to get all the recruits. I mean, he just didn't hide it very well.
Yeah, that was not well appreciated. I want to say I'm blocked also because I clowned on him for that. Regardless, whether he is there or not, yeah, this would be a massive, massive pickup, and hopefully Boo Carter is working on it like that, because man, that would just be awesome. Because there has been a little bit of criticism of Heupel there, that the offensive lineman recruiting has been not as good as you would hope it would be with how good Heupel's offense is. Obviously the wide receiver position recruits itself, and quarterback has been elite, and some things like that. And people have kind of looked and been like, offensive line, it could be better. And this, that would obviously kill that criticism if you were to get Jordan Seaton here.
Yeah, I think there's some negative recruiting that's probably happened there with the offensive line, but Darnell Wright getting top 10 pick should help alleviate some of that. Same stuff we saw with the wide receivers. You're starting to see a little bit of that go away with Jalen Hyatt every time he gets on the field for the Giants, which he'll be on the field here again in 20, 30 minutes on Monday Night Football. Seems like good things happen, but the Giants aren't putting him out there enough, and Giants fans are pretty tore up about that. So doesn't seem like Heupel's offense held him back too much. When he's out there, he's getting open. That Daniel Jones doesn't have time to get the ball to anybody. Yeah,
that as long as he's doing that, you're not going to have, and Tennessee is doing what it does on offense, you're not going to have any trouble getting a guy like a Mike Matthews to commit to Tennessee. But you did also have, I think Cam Michael was another big one that was in town. He's just an athlete, 4-star in the class of 2024. At the moment, favored to Georgia, it looks like. But that was another big one that those you just got to hope that they got the message, that they saw the environment, that it all comes across as, don't you want to come here, play in front of this crowd, get in on what Tennessee is putting together. And then when you're competing against Georgia at this point, you just got to pray. You did the best you could. And then you just, that's that.
It's impossible to recruit against two, back-to-back national champions. It's a slow burn what Heupel's building and recruiting. You keep landing top 10 classes, you're going to build up talent and depth, and you'll slowly get into that top 5, top 3 that you need to be in.
Cam Michael is also going to visit at Texas A&M, one at Kentucky too. I don't want
Kentucky. That's nice that he's going to give them a visit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to put Kentucky down, but I'm going to assume Texas A&M is probably competition there. And Kentucky is, nice of him to go there and give them the time of day. But let's be honest here. So that's pretty much all of it with recruiting. Was there anything else with the recruiting? That's really, we like to go deep on the recruiting in the off season, but it's just nice to see Tennessee get a big win in a nice environment in front of big recruits. It's always great. You got to talk about it. But was there anything else?
You keep putting out these environments and these Saturday night games and dark mode uniforms with these awesome light shows and entrances and primetime games, and you win those games and recruits get to experience that environment, that celebration. It's going to keep paying off. It's not just a one-off deal. I mean, you've seen several of these environments: Florida last year, Alabama, Kentucky, South Carolina this year. It's starting to add up where recruits are like, okay, if I come here, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to be a part of this. They start to trust that. They start to trust what Heupel's building, because I'm sure Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, Billy Napier, anybody that's recruiting against Tennessee, not that Napier has room to talk, can say like, hey, yeah, they're a one-hit wonder. Look how they lost to Florida early this season on the road. They can't sustain this. I have no doubt that that's what's being said out there on the recruiting trail, and Tennessee's just got to keep trying to prove that wrong.
For sure. Yeah, Brandon Coleman says our home game streak is a great thing to lean on
Was
with
it like
inviting
12 now?
recruits. Yeah, that sounds right. Just really impressive how good Heupel has been at home, and just in general, I did really like there was some I don't know, Homer, South Carolina account that posted something like, "What has Josh Heupel done that makes him so much better than Shane Beamer in the same exact amount of time?" Said something along those lines, and Tennessee fans clowned on it. I also think it's a pretty valid question because Tennessee is a more powerful program with better resources, but I would say that you started in a tougher spot with Tennessee. Sanctions looming over you, 30 guys transferring out, yada yada yada. We all know what happened there. And it, I mean, it's just coaching, right? Like it just is the power of the scheme that Josh Heupel runs and the things that he does that set him apart. Where Beamer, it just seems like he's I don't want to say completely living off nepotism, but it feels like he's a little in over his head. And
Well, when the best
to be as
offensive coordinator
sincere
you
about
can
that as I
get,
can be.
when the best offensive coordinator you could get was a tight ends coach at Arkansas, that's pretty telling, right? But he's 17-14 through 31 games. Josh Heupel's 22-9. Jeremy Pruitt was 15-16 at Tennessee through 31 games. He's closer to what Jeremy Pruitt's done at Tennessee than what Josh Heupel's done. He's more on Jeremy Pruitt's level. I mean, the wins and losses show that. And really, Heupel should be 23-8 because we know they beat Purdue. Maybe 24-7. That Ole Miss game got pretty wacky too. If we're being honest, that could have went the other direction with some bad calls and like that strip sack fumble that wasn't called. But either way, yeah, Heupel's clearly accomplished, I think, significantly more.
Absolutely. Well, that's kind of a conversation for another day, but let's get to the final segment. We're going to bring producer Matt back in here for another week to hang out with us, make bye-week predictions, tell us what it was like to be at the South Carolina game. We'll get him on here right after I tell you about our final grade sponsor, HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit when it comes to options. Honestly, more is more. That's why HelloFresh's menu includes 40 recipes and over 100 add-on items to choose from every week. A busy fall schedule doesn't always leave you with time to spare. And with HelloFresh, you don't need to spend all evening in the kitchen to whip up a wholesome meal. With the quick and easy recipes and 15-minute meals, you get a tasty dinner on the table in less time than it takes to get takeout or delivery. Go to HelloFresh.com/50VolsAZ. HelloFresh.com/50VolsAZ and use code VOLS, VOLS, for 50% off plus 15% off your next 2 months. HelloFresh.com/50VolsAZ, then promo code BALLS for 50% off, 15% off your next 2 months. That is HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Now, let's get to it. Let's bring Matt in here. Oh, I switched you guys around. Matt is now Zach Reagan. There we go. All right, we got it right. Matt, what's up, man?
Guys, how are we doing?
Doing all right. You were at the game on Saturday. Blackout. Maybe, well, it was a blackout game. Maybe you were also blackout. I don't know. But how was it? How was that South Carolina game?
It was so fun. It was honestly one of the more memorable games, even from last year. This game was so fun to be at. It was one of the loudest games I've ever heard. And I mean, you just can't beat the blackout. But that pick six was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. I was right there, like more towards the right side student section, because it's more like on that south end zone. It's on the right side. But I mean, that was one of the most electric plays / just moments of my, like, it was incredible. But yeah, it was a great game. Thank God they won, because it was getting testy there. But what a great game. What a great game. And the pressure to Rattler. I told you if we put pressure on them, and they did. But guys, it was fun. It was a great time.
That play you're talking about, the pitch six with Kamal Hadden, that's what I specifically wanted to ask you about. That did you happen to see? Because the TV broadcast didn't really show what the unsportsmanlike penalty was on. I think it was Danico Slaughter that was on the field. I heard somebody on Twitter, I think it was Twitter, maybe a message board, I can't remember at this point, that said something about he was kind of standing over or taunting Rattler right after the interception. I was just wondering if he might actually saw it.
Oh, I did see that. I guess, yeah, now I'm thinking about it, I guess that's, again, it was a blackout game. I was but yeah, I didn't even see, I mean, I remember that, but we sacked him so many times. There was a ton of plays where they were taunting him right after the whistle, standing over him. And I'm actually kind of glad we didn't get flagged more for that. But I don't really remember that. I mean, God, that play though. I mean,
I'm sure it was just complete chaos and celebration.
I mean, everybody was moving back and forth. I mean, that game had so many big plays, and that's what you love about a football game is when they have those big, huge plays. I mean, that Squirrel White catch. Oh my God, what a catch! But that game was filled with big plays. But yeah, I don't remember seeing that. I was too busy jumping up and down. But it was,
no doubt,
that was crazy,
dude. Nothing makes me long to have Mike Keith be our play-by-play guy on the radio than a game like that, because I only thought about that because I heard the radio call of Squirrel White's catch, and Bob, man, he goes, "Oh, Squirrel, it's an incomplete pass, and there's going to be a flag." Neither of those things happened.
Can you imagine if Mike Keith was on those games? Because I'm a huge Titans fan, from Nashville. Grew up with Mike. I mean,
he was sacks.
I know. Classic Mike Keith. He's come talk in my high school a couple times. Great guy. Really nice dude.
He's the absolute best. I mean, a huge Titans guy too. And I mean, he just really, if only. Well, regardless, we're getting off the beaten path there about the things that I wish would happen with Tennessee radio. But this really, I just wanted to have like bye-week predictions here, because I think obviously Tennessee doesn't play for another 2 weeks. And so a lot of really good games this week and some interesting stuff that I think will affect Tennessee in the future. Specifically, Texas A&M plays Alabama, and let's start there. Texas A&M is Tennessee's next game. They look like they got a pretty good defensive line. They look like their quarterback is decent. Matt, I'll throw it to you first with this one. Do you think Texas A&M? Let's do just 2 in a row. We'll ask your prediction for the Tennessee Texas A&M game, and then Zach and I will save ours for next week. But start with Texas A&M Alabama. You think they can do it?
No, I think Alabama. I think this is another statement win for them. I think this Alabama team is better than what people have been giving them early. I think it's a really close game. I don't think I can put a score on this. I don't know if it's going to be a shootout, or I just don't know Texas A&M that much. But I think Jaden Milroe is starting to get really comfortable. I mean, you saw him last week. He doesn't, they talk about how he can't throw the ball. He can throw a ball. And when he uses his legs, I mean, it's not like he's not having 2-yard runs. He's having 20-yard runs. He's having 30-yard runs. And a team hasn't stopped him yet. So I think Alabama dominates this one, actually. I don't even think it's going to be close. And I think it's going to be a statement win for them. What do you guys think?
Zach?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Alabama wins. I don't know if they dominate necessarily just because it's at Texas A&M. I mean, they certainly could, because I'm kind of like you. I haven't watched a ton of Texas A&M lot, and I don't know them as in depth as some other SEC teams. But I do agree with like the statement game part. Like Nick Saban, I think he's trying to figure out how to win without an elite quarterback, because he's had several in a row back before, the early 2010s, late 2000s, when he was first at Alabama. He was kind of known for winning without those elite type quarterbacks. I think he's kind of trying to figure out how to do that again, maybe. I think they come out with something to prove in this game. I really do, and I think they win.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be close, and because like you said, it's in College Station, I think they squeak it out. Milroe with his legs is lethal. for sure. And their defense is probably better than last year. I think the offense isn't as good, but the defense is probably better. The offense is nowhere near as good as it was last year. No Jahmyr Gibbs, no Bryce. So I'll say it's close. They squeak it out. Texas A&M's defensive line's a real deal. And I think that's not getting talked about. No, they got smacked around by Miami, and you think about that, whatever you want. Miami's, I don't think, a very great team, but I just think that Texas A&M, they're kind of rounding into form a little bit. That quarterback's decent. I'll say Alabama does win, but it's squeaky. It's close.
You guys think they're squeaking it? I don't know.
I mean, Jimbo is look, you Matt could be right here because Jimbo does lay an egg, every now and then. Like that's going to happen at some point.
I'm not a Jimbo guy. Never been a Jimbo guy.
I don't think anybody in Texas A&M is even a Jimbo guy at
Yeah.
this point, to be honest.
I know.
But, they beat Alabama. He can maybe change some minds there, but I don't think he's long for Texas A&M. I think if that buyout wasn't so high, he'd already be gone.
Well,
he can recruit though. He can recruit.
True. That's definitely true. Zach and I will give our predictions for the Texas A&M game next week, but we'll just straight up here early. You think Tennessee is going to do it in Neyland against Texas A&M?
God, I just have this weird feeling this is going to be a kind of a trap game. We're coming off
bye week. And it's probably going to be emotional against Alabama.
I know. There's something, I'm getting a feeling, but I can't go against the Vols. I think it's going to be literally up to a field goal. I think it's going to be one of those games, a field goal to win the game. I'll give it to us. I'm going to say 31-28, us. I think this goes down to the wire. Final drive, field goal, and hopefully we get. I mean, again, I hate to say this, but our atmosphere really does play. I feel like it doesn't feel like we lose at home anymore. After that, I mean, it is so loud. I don't know how away teams even get close. Like it is that loud. But I don't know. I think if Jimbo drops this game against Bama, they're gonna be pissed too because it's like again, this is now Jimbo's in the hot seat and he's got to do something fast. He's got to put some work in. 31-28, and we win by a field goal. And it goes down to the wire. What about you guys?
Well, like I said, we'll give we got to keep people coming back. So we'll go with ours next week. That'll be the last segment of the show next week for me and Zach for our prediction for Texas A&M. This one also ties into Tennessee here. In a game that's happening this weekend. LSU, Missouri. Obviously, Missouri coming up. Missouri getting a lot of hype. Topped Tennessee in the AP poll after beating Vandy by less points than Tennessee beat South Carolina by. I don't know. Interpret that however you want. But a lot of people, it's great. Brady Cook is now God's gift to Missouri football. He's the best quarterback in the SEC to some people. Do you think that Missouri, I mean, it's at LSU. So
no, I think it's at Missouri. Is it? I think it's in Missouri this year.
Let me check.
I'm checking right now.
And that is
it is. It is. You're right. Yes. So okay. So that's a big factor. I mean, not that Missouri has but
it's a noon game. It's a noon game. So I don't think it's gonna be.
I don't remember what Tennessee did last time when I was noon game. Never know.
Can
I'm gonna say
can Missouri beat LSU?
Absolutely not. I think Missouri's some frauds. Now, I would like to shout out one of their defensive linemen went to my high school, Niles Gaddy. He's all SEC preseason. Really good player, nice guy. No way. Especially after that loss this past weekend. No, I think LSU kills them. I think Missouri's some frauds. I think they're getting so much hype right now. I don't know. It's at LSU, and they're pissed. Give me LSU by a long shot. I think Missouri's getting close. I think they're getting close to, picking up games and starting to win games and being more recognized in the SEC. LSU's pissed off. I mean, that was a emotional win by Ole Miss. So I think LSU's pissed. I think it's not close.
LSU's defense is not great. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, it definitely sets up to be kind of like a shootout type deal, but I kind of agree with the whole revenge factor. After the Ole Miss game, being mad, it's a noon game, so it's not a huge advantage for Missouri. That place can be pretty lifeless, even when it's sold out. It's a weird it's a weird place to play. You remember when Georgia went there last year? It was just a weird vibe the whole game. But I think LSU win. Brian Kelly's been in this position before. I don't love Brian Kelly, but he's a veteran coach that's been through tons of ups and downs, and I gained a lot of respect for him as a coach after he went, I think, 4-8 that year at Notre Dame and kind of bounced back after that, because that can be tough to come back from. You don't see that a lot. You lose faith, your team lose faith, boosters, donors, they all lose faith really quick. So I think he'll have them on the right track. He did it last year after Tennessee lost to LSU, or after LSU lost to Tennessee and got them back on track. I think he'll be okay. It could be a shootout just because of LSU's defense, but they still have some dudes down there. So we'll see. I know the defensive coordinator LSU, Matt House, had kind of been had some off the field stuff that he had to deal with maybe early in the year or preseason. So John Jancic, who oddly used to be Tennessee's defensive coordinator, had kind of been helping out with some of that. So maybe they did all that straightened out. But I like LSU here.
I'll say Missouri does it.
Dark horse, Charlotte. Dark horse.
LSU's defense is straight up butt, dude. They are not not good. You just look at what has happened so far. Shredded by FSU, absolutely shredded by Ole Miss. What was another game they won?
They beat Mississippi State 41-14, so they did decent there, but I don't think Mississippi State's, they're still trying to figure out who they are too. And then
they don't know what they're doing yet.
34-31 over Arkansas, so still gave up 31 points.
31 points Arkansas.
That lost their OC, right? I mean, they're doing, had to replace.
But I'll say it's Missouri. It's big signature win for Drinkwitz, and pulls that one out. But I still don't think Missouri's that good. I think Tennessee will still go to Missouri and win, regardless of the fact that
though. I think he's a good coach. I do like him. He's turning their program around. Really?
I don't know. Yeah, he just is. He's
Mr. Visor.
I think he's better. He's better than Beamer, but he strikes me the same way. He's just kind of disingenuous. He's trying a little too hard.
He's a smart guy.
A lot of stuff he does is cringy.
I think he's a really smart guy. I just think it's really going to be really hard for him to have the success that he wants to have in the SEC. I think he's more suited to be like an ACC guy. Like he feels like an ACC coach to me.
And Missouri's a tough place to win.
It is.
How do you recruit a guy to Missouri? Like, especially when, a 3-star will go to Missouri, but how do you get like a 4 or 5-star to come to Missouri?
Yeah. Well, they did change. They literally changed the NIL law so he could earn money the moment that he signed his financial aid papers, because they did. Who was the 5-star they got? Williams Winery, right? That's the DL they got there, and he's from Missouri, so the law applied to him. So if there's a 5-star in Missouri, they might have a chance.
Give him some check. Give him some money.
The only way. Yes, the only way.
Other than that, you don't.
It's not happening. Yeah.
It's two more games here. Kentucky is at Georgia. Georgia looking a little shaky against Auburn, and by a little, I mean kind of a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Can Kentucky, after smacking Florida around, can they go to Georgia and pull a miracle?
It's at Georgia. It's the game at Georgia.
Yeah.
No. I would love to say that they could beat Georgia. I mean, they killed Florida, but I don't know. I think no. Give me Georgia. I really do think we're Georgia's first big test, and I think that's gonna be a good. I think that is gonna be their first big test. But no, we'll give it to them. Unfortunately, we'll give it to the dogs on that one. But Georgia's gonna take that one.
Yeah, the fact that it's a night game in Athens, Georgia has not played that well. You're starting to hear some of the noise. There's some AP voters, I think, that voted like Texas over Georgia in the polls. Not obviously Georgia's still number one, but there's some voters that kind of expressed some concern that Georgia's not who they were last season, which obviously they're not up to this point. But Kirby Smart uses that as motivation. I think
that's what I was about to say. Yeah,
I think a night game, SEC game. You're starting to hear a little bit of that chatter that maybe Georgia's not as good as they were last season. I mean, that feeds right into what Kirby Smart loves to do to motivate his team. So, yeah, I think this might be okay, Georgia is going to be okay type game.
Yeah,
I think that's what happens here.
Yeah, I feel that same exact way. I think Kentucky overhyped because I think Florida sucks, and then Kentucky comes in with that hype and just gets their butt kicked. They lose by 30, and suddenly everyone's like, "Oh, Georgia is the best team in America, and Kentucky is," I think it's going to be one of those, and it's going to be.
I don't see why they don't just throw the ball
really
to Brock Bowers every single time in the middle of the field and just.
He's one of the best tight ends I've ever seen in my life.
Like how you can't tackle that guy.
He's so good.
Well, final one here. Vandy going to Florida. Is Florida so bad? And Tennessee so unlucky, so whatever, cursed against Florida that Vandy will go down and beat Florida in the swamp. Can the Doors beat them 2 years in a row and Tennessee cannot?
What year did Florida? This was a couple years ago when Vandy went in and beat Florida. It was like what 6 years ago.
Isn't it every team in the SEC has beaten Florida in the swamp since Tennessee last beat Florida in the swamp? I believe.
I'm sure
is
they
a real
have.
stat.
It feels that way. That way.
Can the Doors do it? Absolutely not. No, not a chance. I would love for Vandy to beat Florida. No, absolutely no way. Graham Mertz has a good game. Vandy's just not there yet. They're not. It might be a little close in the first half, though. It could be one of those games where it's close in the first half, and all how Vandy fans do. Oh, this is going to be an upset, and then they get blown out in the second half. Florida beats them.
Yeah, I don't see any chance. I think it's a night. Is it a night game in the swamp? I'm not sure, but really that really doesn't matter.
4 o'clock.
It's close enough. It's that afternoon game.
It'll get dark. It'll get dark.
I mean, Vanderbilt's not good. They got blown out by Wake Forest, who is not good at all without Sam Hartman. They lost to UNLV. Got blown out by Missouri. I don't see them going down there and winning this game in any way. And I think Florida fans are still in on the season just enough to be loud because of that win against Tennessee. Now, if they had lost to Tennessee, then maybe this is a crowd that's turned on Billy Napier and they're ready to be done with him. But I think they've still got a little bit of hope that they can figure this out. And I think there'll be a pretty decent crowd there.
It's not too far away from Florida fans turning. I mean, I was listening to Andy Staples' show over the weekend, and he had a Florida guy on there talking about how big Napier's buyout is and all this stuff. So, which, by the way, it is $31 million. So that's hilarious. But, I mean, Vandy, they just stink, man. They just,
I wish we had a better in-state rival. I really do.
Yeah, they're just trash. Like, it just is what it is. Most teams in the SEC can beat Vandy with one arm tied behind their back, and that just is what's going to happen on Saturday because Florida is about as good as a team with one arm tied behind their back. So
Vanderbilt really stands no chance to build a program anymore at this point with the portal because if somebody gets good there, they're not going to stick around. Somebody's going to pay them to go elsewhere. So it's really a losing situation there for whoever coaches them. And I like Clark Lee. I think he's a good dude. I think he's a good coach, but it's just a hopeless situation.
Zach, you don't want to play in a construction field. You don't want to run through the end zone and see some construction workers behind you piling some dirt up on a big Saturday night.
How their recruiting visits have went. You probably got 3 stars showing up there, like low.
Yeah, you probably have like a green screen up there with what the stadium will look like in 10 years.
That would actually be a better idea than what they have right now.
It has to be that they bring dudes there and they go like, "You'll have a diploma from Vanderbilt." Like that has to be their main selling point.
Just go show them the Titan Stadium or something. Even though,
I mean, dude, one of my best friends in the entire world is a massive Vandy fan. He got married on Vandy's campus in that chapel that they got there, and we took his. I was a groomsman, and I was his best man, and we took the pictures in Vandy Stadium. I've been completely like behind the scenes everywhere in there. I mean, it's nothing. There's just like. There's no like, oh, there's a nice like the athletic facility. They got it. They have like a pool and they don't. There's nothing. Like there just is. I don't know. Like it has to simply be like, oh, you get a Vandy diploma. That's the thing, and you get to tell everybody you went to Vandy because it's a prestigious school.
I literally grew up in Nashville, and as a kid, it wasn't. We're going to the Vandy game. Let's go hit the Vandy game. That was never a thing. So it's just
Jay Cutler literally said on I can't remember who he was on now. I think it was
he's on his own podcast.
Well, he was on a podcast with the guy that played at Virginia that was in the NFL. That was a high draft pick. I can't remember now. what his name was. But anyway, Cutler said that he doesn't take his kids to Vanderbilt games because he doesn't want them to associate that with football and college football.
God.
So
Oh,
that's pretty bad. And he lives in Nashville. So
yeah.
Yikes.
Oh, that's
bad.
brutal. That's brutal.
I mean, dude, that friend of mine.
Chris Long was who he's on the podcast with.
Well, that friend of mine, season tickets, like pays and goes to every game.
I saw a Vanderbilt ticket for $1 one time.
Yeah, he's not.
There was like a whole story about it.
It's $8 for season tickets.
Season tickets, 14 bucks. No, Odie. No. How many games do you play home games? Yeah,
7, 8, something like that.
$6 or whatever. $1 a game.
Jeez, that's brutal.
Yeah. All right, that's it. Thanks to everybody for watching. I mean, we're almost at an hour and a half here. It's a marathon session, but Matt, thanks for hanging out. Once again, we'll get you back on a little bit later in the season. And I'll ask again, just in case, any social media, anything you want to plug?
A third show, I'll drop it for the fans, but I don't think so.
Go.
I think we're still going to be producer Matt for a little bit. So
build up to it.
Yeah, we got to build some suspense there. But seriously, thanks to everybody for watching. It really the comments were on fire tonight, and you guys are so good, and we can't appreciate you enough for watching. If I lived in Nashville, I'd buy season tickets so that I could use one every other year just to watch Tennessee play. It probably would be about the same price to do 2 years
cheaper,
of,
to be honest.
2 years of Vandy tickets compared to a nosebleeds at a Tennessee game. All right. Seriously, thanks again. Thanks to Matt. Thanks to Zach. That is it. Yeah, that is it. I'll leave it there. We'll talk to y'all next week.